Good morning and welcome to Rising. Happy Thursday. That's my busiest day of the week, and I'm happy to kick it off with Lindsey Granger, who's back from, what, travels? Where were you?
I was in Los Angeles, New York,
wow.
doing some stuff for World of Travel because, you know, the series premiered last week for Nexstar, so I went to some Nexstar-owned stations and talked about it.
I saw your interview with Kevin O'Leary. It was very interesting.
Thank you. Yeah, he talked about it a lot. He actually went viral for some things he said about AI.
Yeah,
we can talk about it on the show yesterday.
I very much agree with him.
Do you?
Yes.
We're going to have to get into it then.
Yeah. Actually, we have a segment later where we should talk about that, the
Yes.
Bernie Sanders, Elon Musk thing. So
Yes.
save it for that.
We will. And I missed arguing with you, honestly, so I'm excited to continue on with our back-to-schedule programming. Coming up on Rising, Democrat Robert Garcia has caused outrage amongst Republicans after announcing that the House Oversight Committee website will have a so-called ICE tracker.
Plus, a new study on peanut allergies in children has some criticizing the medical community. Egads.
And Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett says she's considering a run for Senate. But first, Robby, what is on your radar?
Well, Karine Jean-Pierre, the former White House press secretary, is participating in a media tour to promote her new book, Independent, a look inside a broken White House outside the party lines. But her numerous appearances with otherwise ideologically friendly interviewers, Stephen Colbert, Tim Miller, Gayle King, have not gone well for a very specific reason. She has no satisfying answer to the question on everyone's minds. That question, which has rightly been put to her every single time she appears on television, is something like this. How could you not have known the president was in such bad shape? When King asked her version of the question, Jean-Pierre responded thusly.
I was his White House press secretary, which means I had a role that saw him practically every day and traveled with him.
And you saw nothing.
For more than 95%. We've always said, we're not going to say, oh, he didn't age. He aged. And he poked fun at it. We always owned up. And with age comes what happens when you get older.
Which is?
But when we talk about the mental acuity, and again, I take this very, very seriously.
Yeah.
I never saw anyone who wasn't there. I saw someone who was always engaged. I saw someone who understood policy, pushed us on the policy, and also understood history.
Someone who was always there. Well, for Colbert, Jean-Pierre conceded that Biden's June debate performance was disappointing, but maintained that she had always seen the president in complete command of his faculties.
I saw every day a really ugly assault on someone who had 50-plus years of experience and who, again, objectively had done a good job as president of the United States. And it was heartbreaking to see that type of behavior.
I think all of that, everything you're saying, I cannot fault the factual basis of what you're saying or your feelings about it.
And then
what happened was the debate performance. Everything is downstream of that.
And no one is saying that the debate performance wasn't shocking, wasn't a disappointment. No one is saying that.
Disappointment is such a light term.
And then, with Tim Miller, Jean-Pierre demurred and admitted she could not speak to whether Biden was well enough to serve as president until 2028.
Like, the notion that this person was up for being president to 2028, was up for the communications responsibility of this job and fighting. No, well, if he won again, he would have to have been president all the way till 2028. I think that's an absurd thing to suggest that he could have been president. Do you think he could have been president in 2028?
I can't speak to that. Here's what I.
Well, obviously, no. But so was he up for it though? I guess. He didn't have the vigor for this fight.
Let me. We have to rewind the tape a little bit and not be revisionist historians here.
Seriously, why is KJP even putting herself through this? It's humiliating. The uncomfortable and unavoidable fact of the matter is that the news media, conservative and mainstream, had already taken notice of Biden's diminished mental acuity well before the debate. A majority of the American people had noticed it. A majority of Democrats had noticed it. The difficulty of concealing Biden's decline was such that the president's innermost circle shielded him from press scrutiny, kept his own cabinet at bay, and then scheduled can't-miss meetings with legislators during the periods of time throughout the day at which he was the sharpest. Now, she was the press secretary, and she didn't notice any of this? It's frankly unbelievable, unless she was unusually out of the loop. She certainly isn't claiming she was out of the loop, however, so one wonders then, why she would bother telling her story in book format and discussing it on national television if she cannot honestly reckon with these incredible shortcomings. Now, she says she's become an independent. She no longer identifies as a Democrat, mostly because, it seems, she doesn't like how the Democratic Party treated Joe Biden. I guess she thinks they should have stuck by their man and lost even worse to Donald Trump. Again, it's hard to take any of this seriously, and she basically seems like she's performing a stunt aimed at, I guess, selling books, if she's selling books. But if she's not going to grapple honestly with how she could have missed what many of you did not, even from a much greater distance, then I'm not sure why we should care what she has to say. And I'm sorry if that sounds harsh, but she was the primary comms person for a president who had lost the ability to coherently speak for himself. And I think, Lindsey, that she is just really kind of lost here, but am I being too hard on her?
Well, I just want to start with the positive news.
Okay.
I think it's honorable that she is, being so loyal to President Biden. She was his former President Biden. She was his, like you said, communications head for a long time, stayed with him, as she said in the CBS interview, 95% of the time, spent a ton of time with him. And now as he's battling cancer and, going through his experience of these later chapter of his life, to continue to pile on is not, to me, like I've consistently said, the best strategy for her. Now, selling books and not answering the real questions, maybe the timing is off, maybe wait a year when it dies down a little bit. But I just think that's honorable and set to the side. But like I said about Kamala coming out with her book or Karine Jean-Pierre, a lot of this consistent dialogue from all people of the Democratic Party was that democracy was at stake if President Trump won again. And so to hear her say that she couldn't believe and to read quotes from her book about George Clooney speaking up and saying that Biden should not run. And Nancy Pelosi, she couldn't believe it that they asked Biden to drop out, whether in secret or publicly. I just don't understand why we would continue to push forward when leaders of the party, big donors of the party, are saying this is not the best move forward. She said she didn't think that Kamala had the capacity to win the election, not because of Kamala not being sharp or smart enough, because she didn't think America was progressive enough to elect a woman of color president. And that's why she thought that was a mistake to switch gears. But tell me, if you were next to him and the debate was extremely a surprise, but then Jake Tapper's book tells us that Jill Biden was wholly protecting Biden and kind of keeping people away from him. But then you describe in many interviews Jill Biden as somewhat of a mentor figure to you. How can you, make it all make sense to us? And that's the biggest thing for me, is that people just want to understand your perspective. If you're going to be honest and real and raw and leave the party, fine. But people are looking for guidance right now, particularly in the Democratic Party after losing an election and seeing where we're at, literally at a stalemate with a government shutdown because of something that Democrats are requesting. What is the way forward? You're just leaving the party because of what a majority of people felt, discouraged by Joe Biden's leadership. I don't think that that's a good strategy. A lot of people are leaving the party because they felt let down by the fact
people
that
are leaving
Joe Biden
the
kept
Democratic
going
Party
forward.
For the opposite reason she is. She's
So it
leaving the
seems-
party because it was not loyal enough to Joe Biden. I mean, that's a constituency of one. That's just her. She's the only one in the entire country who feels that way.
And that's why I think she's looking at it like, a close family friend that gets older and not like a realistic, this is policy and
loyalty.
politics.
She is, I guess she is loyal, and maybe that's a good thing. I think this level of loyalty being shown to Donald Trump would be not something that liberal commentators would say.
I call out that all the time,
admirable.
so I'll take that criticism.
Yeah.
I do call that out often, that people are being too loyal to
Yeah,
President.
I wish people would speak up. If you see something, say something, like they advise us on the metro and at the airport.
But there's no need to even kick Biden while she's down. She wants to write a book and tell her story. I don't see the
I will kick.
necessity of her to kick Biden while
I
he's in
will
this moment.
I shall kick.
This is what we disagree on.
Yep, I shall kick. Next up, the DNC seems to be in rough financial shape just over a year out from a critical midterm election for them. The reason why is coming up next. We'll be right back. Bad news for Democrats ahead of the midterms. Axios reporting that the DNC just spent more than $1.5 million to pay back debts incurred by Kamala Harris's campaign last year.
That brings the total payout for that campaign to more than $20 million and still counting. According to that Axios report, Democratic officials aren't even sure how much more outstanding debt there is from Harris' campaign. That's seemingly made worse by the fact that as of the start of this month, Republicans' war chest was more than 7 times the size of Democrats, according to filings. Now, Democrats only had about $12 million in cash on hand, while Republicans had a whopping $86 million, a fact that could make it difficult for Democrats to support this year's key gubernatorial elections in Virginia and New Jersey, and put them in a bad position to support candidates in the midterms next year. This isn't exactly new. Following President Obama's re-election in 2012, the DNC also paid out more than $20 million. That debt reportedly wasn't paid off until 2015, even with Obama helping raise funds.
In response to the report, conservatives online have poked fun at the DNC and Harris, with some suggesting the former vice president should use her book sales to cover the debt. Meanwhile, author Randall Brink posted on X, quote, "What an unprecedented waste of money. I'm thinking that the poor sucker Democrat contributors really pleased to hear this." Yes, so one is forced to contemplate and wonder about the Kamala strategy of getting big celebrity appearances and endorsements, where even if you didn't have to pay them, you have to pay the vendors, you have to do all that sort of thing. Some of this is just campaigns rack up debt, and it's kind of just the way it goes. Obviously, the stakes are very high, so I won't pretend it wasn't worthwhile for them to go wildly into
Throw
debt.
all the pasta at the wall.
Yeah, they're going to try that, but it speaks to their fundraising difficulties. And now fundraising isn't everything. Hillary Clinton outraised Donald Trump significantly in fundraising in 2016. It didn't matter. Democrats have at various points had a fundraising advantage. I don't know that they do now. Maybe it depends on the candidate. But it must be hurting them that they don't really have an Obama-esque figure, other than, I guess, Obama himself, to kind of to get rich celebrity people to give money to the DNC, which would help.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I think the messaging
All the
matters
tech
right
CEOs
now.
are with Republicans. That's got to hurt.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. They did this shit. But I think that the messaging right now, when you talk about the actual thing, that the red flag that I saw is that we're inching closer to the midterms. There is a major conversation about health care. Actually, people are looking into early premiums. You can't yet register, but I read a report that if your premium was $888, that it could go up to $1,904. And that's the type of doubling that people are seeing as they look at early preliminary Affordable Care Act premiums available to them, which is a dramatic thing coming up as people vote and think about how health insurance affects them, exactly why the government's shut down right now. People might be voting on that in the midterms next year. And, Marjorie Taylor Greene has made note of that. Senator Josh Hawley has made note of that people might be upset with how much these things are rising. So Democrats have that in their favor. But at the same time, if they have no money to promote what they're doing about this and how this shutdown is actually worthwhile and anything for these candidates as they pop up in the next few months, well, that's not going to be ideal. Now, I saw a New York Times article that titled "How Kamala Burned Through $1.5 billion in 15 weeks." So this seems like the Bash Democrats show, which I don't want it to be, but it really is true that they did spend a lot of money, and I don't mind them fundraising. That's a beautiful thing to be able to fundraise to that level. But I think what happened is that people had the money and they used it on not paying celebrities, but creating this big, she had a whole interview with Oprah, people that I admire and think that are awesome. But she spent it in ways that didn't resonate with people that just wanted to buy cheaper groceries, get to where they were going, feed their families.
She should have spent $0 and did a Joe Rogan interview. That would have been worth.
That would have been, and then we talked about that.
Billions.
And we learned that authenticity gets votes. Yeah. So that does. Access helps you get votes. And so they tested that strategy with young voters on Trump's side of the campaign successfully and did a good job with that. So I think, you have to really emphasize and spend the money on emphasizing what policies you would put forward, emphasize how you're going to take hard stances on certain issues. I think that she lost because people saw that she had all this fanfare and star power, but they didn't see the policy to match and the answers to the questions that were firm and fast regarding things, big issues like how to move the country forward, like Israel and Gaza. She kind of played this tight line where she pleases everybody, and people were dissatisfied with that. So when I think about them still paying for this, and the Democrats have not solidified whether they want to be the party of Mamdani-esque figures or the party that is completely stays away from anything like that and gets away from social and cultural issues, it's kind of, I hope that this message, we have healthcare right now, but I hope that this message starts to solidify on what the next steps are, because we're deep into the year. I think strategy has to get put in place. We can't be looking for our next Joe Rogan.
They need candidates.
But people are actually in the ring. Gavin Newsom is being very adamant that he's looking like he wants to be a candidate.
They need candidates that don't have Nazi tattoos.
Yeah,
We're
going to talk about that. Yeah, don't
worry. We'll talk
don't
about
get
that
me
later.
into that. But yes, I wasn't looking for him to be the next president anyway. So I do think that he should go. That's why I said this is the bashing Democrats show. But I think they could have done way better with the way the money was used. And it was, when you look at the most raised money in any presidential campaign. I mean, she broke records, and I saw the biggest stars come out, and then it almost looked like, to what end?
The stars are. It's not. How does that help? How is that winning over the sliver of persuadable voters in Pennsylvania and Michigan who decide the election? Right? Does Oprah's endorsement carry? Well,
it used to.
Well, does it move Rust Belt working class people in Pennsylvania? I don't know.
Well, no, I think people
Obviously
felt that it was out of touch, and they felt that it was more ostentatious than effective. And they looked at that and were like, okay, you really don't understand what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And so whether or not Trump's policies right now match with some of the things that he said on the campaign trail about changing prices and livelihoods, we're here. And they went with Trump. A lot of people who were indifferent about the way that he behaved, I mean, they weren't indifferent. They felt strongly and condemned the way he behaved. Were like, listen, if he's going to make my life more affordable, I'm going over there. And that's what people said in interviews that I've seen all over News Nation as we talked to people in the field. Some people loved Trump, but then there were other people that were like, between the two, somebody's talking about money and somebody's not.
I don't love him personally. I'm not part of the Trump cult. It's not a personal obsession with him for me. I just prefer his policies, including getting rid of the ridiculous healthcare subsidies that were a COVID era.
So you don't mind somebody's Affordable Care Act policy going from $900 to $1,900? That's good to you? That's the kind of America that you want to see? Because that's the actual, it was a KFF study, which is an independent health organization, that I read that literally that some people are tripling in certain states. I mean, that's not, imagine if you're 26 years old or 25 and you're on your parents' health care because of Obamacare, you're able to continue on.
Yes, if you're 26 and still relying on your parents to take care of you,
what are you
right,
saying?
that something has gone very wrong.
Excuse me, I used my parents' health care until I was about 25, and I'm doing just fine in life. That was a great help for me living in New York, where I had to put up a fake wall to be able to afford the place, and I'm making like way under probably what's appropriate in the media space.
At what, 21, 22?
Yeah, so it gives you like a 3-year buffer to get your life together. I mean, times are hard right now.
Get a job in 3 years.
No, I certainly worked. I'm
not
worked.
talking about you specifically. If you can't get a job 3 years after college, I question what kind of degree you got then. Maybe you got some silly liberal arts, or even worse, journalism degree.
I got a journalism degree. No, this sounds very targeted. I got all these things. I was on my parents' health insurance. I got a journalism degree. What are we doing here?
Now you're a fabulously
well, look,
wealthy
ladies and gentlemen,
TV
you
star.
can be successful with a journalism degree. You can be successful if you use
can't.
Obamacare. All these things that I've tested.
Would you honestly advise young people to get a journalism degree? I would not. I would steer them away from that aggressively.
Look at Barry Weiss. Look at Barry Weiss.
I'm not saying I would steer them away from journalism.
She
I
literally-
would steer you away from studying journalism. I would absolutely, under no circumstances, should you go into debt to get a degree in journalism.
Well, I think
that
we
would
should
be like
restructure college and
yeah.
affordability.
I don't really think
That's
you
a
should
whole
go into
other
debt to get any kind of degree, but if going into debt to get a medical degree or a law degree or something where there's much more guarantee of employment than in our field, which is chaos. I'm not saying don't be a journalist,
Debbie
but
Downer
do
over
not
here. We're
study
over
it
here.
in college and don't go into debt to do it. I beg you.
Now, Congressman Robert Garcia seems to have irked Attorney General Pam Bondi over his latest announcement about an ICE tracker. Don't go anywhere.
Attorney General Pam Bondi is slamming Democrats over a new so-called ICE tracker that's launching on their Oversight Committee website.
During a press conference in Los Angeles earlier this week, Congressman Robert Garcia announced the initiative in a now viral clip. Let's take a look.
The committee will be launching on their website a master ICE tracker where we're going to be essentially tracking every single instance that we can verify that the community will be able to send us information on, and it'll be all available in one central place. And you'll be able to look up that information as it relates to Los Angeles as well.
In response to that clip, Bondi wrote on X, "Shut down Democrats are already refusing to pay our law enforcement agents. Now, Representative Robert Garcia and Senator Blumenthal are trying to put ICE agents at risk just for doing their jobs. The Justice Department has zero tolerance for violence against law enforcement, and we will prosecute any person who physically assaults our agents.
Now, Garcia himself hit back on Bondi, writing, quote, "Hey, AG Pam Bondi, ICE detaining over 170 U.S. citizens is not them just doing their jobs. But since you have the time to tweet at me, when are you going to stop covering for pedophiles and release the Epstein files?" They always go back to this Epstein files.
Hey,
Everybody always goes back. It's like a running thing. Like, okay.
When there was, I think, a report on an ICE one of these ICE tracking websites being formed by people, and I said on TV that, well, you have a First Amendment right to do that, so I don't have any problem with it. I think it's a little weird for the government for the government itself to compile some website to track agents of the government is kind of odd.
Well, they're asking constituents and local people, specifically in LA, to send in video that they can verify accurately to say, so when we have people going on national media and leaders of this country in federal positions saying nothing's happening, we're talking about it's mostly safe, and then we have real videos that are verified, then we know, as much as we want to also protect ICE agents, we need to protect American citizens. And if they're submitting information to show that, like, for example, this 2025 ProPublica investigation found more than 170 incidents where ICE was extremely aggressive, like dragging, tackling, and beating people. So if we see some of those videos, we're not just going off of ProPublica and what they reviewed. We can see with our own eyes. And I think see something, like you said earlier, say something is important.
Is this about recording examples of abuse or recording so that there is no abuse, which I totally support.
Right, it's like body cameras.
I support
Exactly.
that. Oftentimes I think it's used to help acquit police officers who are falsely accused of bad behavior. Is it about that, or is it about showing people how to avoid the scrutiny of ICE officers? I mean, I think that's the concern conservatives will have, is this is trying to help illegal immigrants elude immigration authorities.
I think the overwhelming conversation that I keep seeing come up in my timeline, and you and I have went back and forth because you're like, some of these videos aren't verified, some of this is hearsay, but there's actual incidents like storming an apartment complex in Chicago by helicopter, deploying chemical agents near a public school. These are all reported online. Handcuffing Chicago City Council member at a hospital. These are all attached to ICE doing their jobs. And now if we have video to back some of these statements up and stop treating citizens like they're in a war zone, we can push back to say, this is not appropriate.
None of those things aren't necessarily inappropriate. Obviously, it depends on what the context was.
I mean, do you want city council members being arrested because they're just trying to do their job and see this?
I don't want them arrested for just trying to do their job. I want them
Do you want chemicals
deployed
near Chicago Public School?
Chemicals deployed near a school?
This is
depends what the chemicals are.
What do you mean? No, you don't want any of these tactics attached
do I want an
to
apartment
ICE.
building raided if it's in your home state and it's run by Tren de Aragua? Probably.
Yes, but I don't think you need.
That one was pretty bad. That one was explained to us as some hysterical conservative overreach, and then the more details emerged, I'm like, oh, this is pretty bad.
Well, we have to wrap, Robby. We're going to disagree about this endlessly. Now, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett might be taking on a new adventure as she finds herself at the heart of Texas politics. Stick around.
Welcome back to Rising. Lindsey, what's in your lens today?
Well, of course, we're talking about Jasmine Crockett. Now, she isn't just in the conversation. She is the conversation in Texas politics right now. She hasn't even announced a Senate run, and she's already leading the Democratic field. That's not buzz, that's leverage. Now, Crockett told SiriusXM's The Lori Daniel Favors show that she, quote, will strongly be considering a run for U.S. Senate. And that's not, the motivation isn't ego, it's really backlash. Texas Republicans pushed through a mid-cycle redistricting map that moved Democratic Representative Jasmine Crockett out of her own district. And even though she says she and her team are waiting for the court to issue a final ruling on whether the new lines in these districts will go into effect, Crockett isn't exactly the go quietly type. As she put it, quote, if you want to take my seat of 766,000 away, I feel like there has to be some karma in that, to where I take your seat that is for 30 million away. This is not just a revenge tour, it's strategy. Democratic voters, especially voters of color, are tired of polished speeches and poll-tested emotional restraint. Crockett built a national following by sounding like actual people do when they're fed up. When Republicans tried to censure her earlier this year, it only boosted her authenticity. Beltway insiders heard, quote, too brash. Voters finally heard somebody fighting. And that's what makes her viable in a state Democrats haven't cracked statewide in 30 years. She's not promising to turn Texas blue by being polite, but by expanding who shows up. She said it plainly, quote, "The primary is the primary. That's cool, but you got to win the general. So we're doing some testing here shortly to see if I can expand the electorate." And the numbers back her up. In an NRSC poll, important note, Republicans commissioned this poll, it shows her leading with 35% support among Democratic voters. A University of Texas Houston poll showed her at 31% ahead of every other potential candidate, including household names like Beto O'Rourke. And this is the part that pundits keep missing. If Democrats want to win Texas, they don't just need a candidate with ideas. They need a candidate who sounds like people who stopped voting. The millions who feel unheard, overcharged, and politically unseen. The ones who tuned out after 2024 because nothing in politics sounded like them. To them, Crockett doesn't read as angry. She reads as accurate. If she jumps in, she's not just testing the electorate, she's testing a theory that connection matters more than caution, and that the loudest candidate might finally be the one speaking for the people who've been quiet the longest. In other words, Texas might not be changing parties, but the party might finally be changing its voice.
Well, the Democratic Party already has two interesting candidates in this race, Colin Allred, who ran against Ted Cruz last time around and lost, and this James Tallarico guy who made a big splash after being on Joe Rogan. And if Jasmine Crockett gets in the race too, it'll be really fun and interesting.
You have a smirk on your face. Jasmine Crockett, she's already polling super high. She's already doing well. And that's among Democratic voters, but she said she's testing out. I mean, when you think about the whole redistricting drama that we had all summer, for you guys to put her in a district that she doesn't, not you guys, for Texas Republicans to put her in a district that she doesn't even live in, you should put her on your TV set because she has good information to say, but that's beside the point.
I'll enjoy having her on my TV set.
I'd love to see her debate. Yes, she. What are you like talking like the kids?
No, I think it'd be very entertaining. I think she very well might win the Democratic nomination, and I think she would get utterly destroyed in the general election. But we'll see. I mean, I think they're all going to lose. Texas is a red state. The idea of blue Texas is a pipe dream of the Democratic Party. I think all three of those candidates will lose. Maybe, unless, I guess Republicans, they have their issues because it's Ken Paxton is seeking it, and he's kind of a nut job. He's not great. So Republicans could end with some crazy person, and then Democrats, if they have a nice moderate person, they could win. I don't know that Jasmine Crockett fits that bill.
Oh, I don't think
I think they're more likely to hold the Senate seat if she's the candidate. So
I would say that voters
more power to
are
her.
not like clutching their pearls anymore. Democratic voters are looking for somebody who represents the voice of speaking up, and I think that's why Jasmine Crockett, no matter how much
Hot Wheels.
No, Trump has said worse. Okay, please, let's not even go down the list. Don't act like you don't understand. He said it's worse.
Excuse.
People are matching fire with fire. When you're angry, you say stuff that you don't mean. You always talk about not combing through people's old tweets and things and holding them accountable.
She said this
for the
like
rest
a month ago.
No, you said for the rest of their lives.
Ago.
One thing doesn't count for the rest of their lives. So let Jasmine Crockett. Trump has said rude things. He's the leader of the Republican Party right now. Jasmine Crockett is matching fire with fire. And some people who are fed up are like, you know what? This represents how upset I am. I don't think that's the way to go. I'm an individual, but I'm just telling you, just like you're an individual, I'm sure you don't like everything that President Trump says, right? We can agree.
I certainly do.
Okay, so then therefore some people, the same way that you have an affinity to the policies, appreciate Jasmine Crockett, her policy, her boisterousness, her loudness.
Okay, but you're celebrating her for her boisterousness, not really.
No, I'm celebrating the Democratic Party for finding a voice in Jasmine Crockett. The same party that was voiceless after Kamala lost is finding a rising star, specifically over 2025. She has gained traction. I'm celebrating that they have something. I'm celebrating
not for her policy ideas. Like I prefer Donald Trump's policies for the most part, although I have serious disagreements with him on trade and immigration. I prefer his policies to Democrats' policies, so I support him to the extent I support him over Democrats.
And Jasmine Crockett more aligns with like AOC and Bernie Sanders, right?
Yeah,
she's a populist. So I'm just telling you that's what her policies are. So being that adamant and not being maybe as nice, like Bernie Sanders has a nice way of saying it, right? He does it a diplomatic way. He's been in politics for a long time. Jasmine Crockett might be an extension of that, except the one that's fed up. And people are like, those together kind of makes sense. You remember how well Bernie Sanders was doing when he was polling against Biden and when he was actually being considered to be the Democratic candidate for president. So that Jasmine Crockett's not that far off. She could polish up in a few ways, but if Trump wasn't expected to polish up, I'm not sure why Jasmine Crockett has to when she's going for a lesser position.
Did you know that her colleagues?
Okay, some people hate AOC, and she's also set herself up to run for president if she'd like. So, people hate a lot of people. A lot of Trump's colleagues, newsflash, hated him. They didn't want him to move forward.
Not anymore.
Yeah, not anymore because they had to fall in line. Sometimes that's what the party needs to do. And if we go with Jasmine Crockett's strategy of just taking the bulls by the horn, or if we go with the Democrats' original strategy, which is to find and pay millions of dollars for a new Joe Rogan, and the strategy they laid forth, which has been nothing of substance, I think Jasmine Crockett might be a good leader to follow as they try to figure out what their voice is.
I have to stop myself. I don't know why I'm arguing with you. You're right. You're right, Lindsey. Jasmine Crockett should be the face of the Democratic Party.
Why did you change course?
Should be the
Thank
nominee.
you.
What am I saying?
Why did you say that? Why did you?
Yes, Lindsey.
Maybe she should run for president.
Let's pass over
She should
James
run for president.
Talarico and have it be, yes, directly for president.
Just
I
skip
agree.
everything,
Jasmine
go to president.
Crockett on every ballot would be, yes, I am for this. I am for this. And on behalf of MAGA, your terms are acceptable.
Okay,
what am I doing?
I'm happy that we swayed you over to the
I fully on board.
actual
I'm
right
getting
side.
on board now.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. A new study suggests fewer children are getting peanut allergies these days. We'll discuss why and see how people are reacting to the news up next. A new study shows that the rate of peanut allergies in young children has dropped sharply in recent years.
Health experts say that it's thanks to guidelines that now encourage parents to introduce their kids to peanuts from an early age rather than avoiding them. The New York Times writes, for decades, as food allergy rates climbed, experts recommended that parents avoid exposing their infants to common allergens, but a landmark trial in 2015 found that feeding peanuts to babies could cut their chances of developing an allergy by over 80%.
Now, 2 years after that trial, the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases formally recommended the new guidelines of what it calls early introduction. The new study, published earlier this week in the medical journal Pediatrics, found that food allergy rates among children under the age of 3 have fallen by 36% after those guidelines were put in place. That includes a 43% drop in peanut allergies.
The news is being celebrated in the medical world as it's estimated that around 40,000 children have avoided peanut allergies in the past decade thanks to the new guidelines. But some are upset and even outraged since there's now evidence that the old guidance was wrong. Former Fox News columnist Steve Malloy writes on X, the junk science-fueled American Academy of Pediatrics has harmed an entire generation of children with its nutty advice. And attorney Laura Powell says, well, how many children have needlessly died due to peanut allergies? Doctors' arrogance has a body count. They need to demonstrate a lot of humility if they want to regain trust.
However, others argue that this new development is a good example of the scientific method working the way that it should. Organic chemist Simon May Schling says, quote, this shows what science looks like when it works. You observe, you experiment, you adapt, and yes, you admit when you're wrong. He continues, quote, let scientists be scientists. Let evidence guide action, and let's stop pushing progress just because it's uncomfortable. Because next time, it won't just be peanuts, it might be something far bigger. Listen, as a mom of a kid who had a peanut allergy back in the day.
I wanted to wait to talk to you about this until
Well, I'm glad you held this story for me because I really feel strongly about this. I do believe that doctors and
She does
scientists,
have peanut allergy, is that what you said?
She does, but it went away. She had one for like 1 to 6 months.
Okay.
And just a small one. Like, we're not talking about like needing an EpiPen. We're talking about like maybe need some Benadryl.
Okay.
But it was just like maybe a little itchy. So I would just try some lotion. I used that last resort. So we couldn't figure it out. She just would turn red and itchy. And then next thing you know, we went to our doctor who actually followed these guidelines and was like, sit in the office while we can monitor you. It's like a whole 8-hour process. So it took up the whole day, but we're going to give her spoonfuls of peanut butter every hour and monitor. A bigger spoonful every hour. So I'm just like, oh gosh. So I'm like, is she going to suffer or whatever? And I didn't know that this was this 2015 study that they were doing intentionally. But by that, we learned that she actually doesn't, she kind of was outgrowing the allergy. So they tried it the first time when she was like 3 months, tried it again when she was 6 months, tried it again when she was a year. And we realized that it wasn't affecting her at all, even though we had done the back test where they actually, insert the allergens on your back. And then if you have a bump or a hive, that shows you if the kid's allergic. So I actually was frustrated that doctors were just skipping over this knowledge of having this. That was the biggest part to me. That in 2015, this research came out and some doctors were adamantly saying, no, we still think we can avoid testing peanuts or introducing them early because we think that's the better way to go, when there was research showing that this wasn't the right way. I don't blame anybody before 2015 when there wasn't scientific hard facts that were studied detailed and heavily for not introducing peanuts earlier. Like, I think some of the conversation around conservatives that are frustrated that people weren't introducing this like in 2010 or 2000 is a little insane, because the whole point of science is to try it over and over again. You keep testing until you have a solid study like the one that came out in 2015 that shows you, yes, it's fine to introduce these allergies to kids early. It will help them get over it quicker, because that was actually Kinsley's experience. So I think, like, why are we beating up on doctors? Like, the whole point, kind of like
I'm not beating up on doctors. It's beating up on government health experts confidently asserting something we now know not to be true.
They were going off the information they had at the time.
Well, right, but it comes from a place of overprotectiveness that is too present, I would say, in our policies. Not even our hard and fast policies, but just our entire cultural milieu. On peanuts specifically, I know just from my mother was a nursery school teacher, and just the like, no peanuts anywhere. Like, that was again, not the schools, right? That's just where everyone was for so long, that peanuts were treated like a biohazard. Like, you couldn't bring them in even if your kid was fine with them in case, because what if another kid touches them? They die immediately. It was a level of fear for a long time that has had harmful effects, because we now know we'd be more likely to overcome them if there's a introduction. And I think that speaks to at Reason Magazine, where I write, I work with a woman named Lenore Skenazy, who is known as America's Worst Mom, because she's famous for allowing her kids. She started a whole cultural movement. She let her young child walk to the New York subway station by himself in order to learn self-resourcefulness.
What's young?
I don't know what the exact age was. But it speaks to the fact that we're getting older now, so maybe it's even our grandparents' generation, our parents' and grandparents' generation had much less adult supervision at young ages, at a time where there was actually much more crime. The fear of, like, strangers and kidnappings and all that is so overblown relative to the danger to kids. There's a danger in not giving kids enough unstructured free time and playtime, not letting them explore, not letting them develop, not letting them trip and skin their knees and learn how to play on the jungle gym. It had to be supervised all the time because of this utterly disproportionate fear of kidnapping and strangers and all of that. This is a little different than that, but I think it comes from the same protective ethos, the helicopter parenting mindset that is supported by law, because you're not allowed to let your kid go to the playground or walk to school. Or in so many municipalities, it's criminalized until like adulthood. They arrest parents. They arrest a lot of parents of color. They send CPS after you for leaving your kids to your own devices for some of the day, even though that's natural and healthy and is how most humans were raised, at times where there were greater dangers. So I had that in the back of my mind as I was reading this information.
I get
that makes sense.
No, I get the connection of, you think that the federal government is helicoptering this whole situation with the peanuts, and they were being overly cautious. But at the same time,
an abundance of caution.
Right, but my question would be, as conservatives, how can they say that is overly cautious and have an attitude about it, but then also when President Trump is overly cautious regarding Tylenol and moms with stuff that's not even researched thoroughly as it needs to be to connect the dots fully? He's basing off few studies, not the majority of studies, telling women don't take Tylenol very adamantly, even though the rest of his team wasn't saying the same thing. But the president went on TV and was like, I would stay away from it totally, So how could that's over? That's the federal.
Unless you need it.
Yeah, he had very strong words. I remember that press conference. I cannot quote him right this second, but he had strong words that many articles were written about how he presented it. It's not as much of a crisis as he made it seem. He is part of the federal government. He said that out of his own mouth. So it's like, do you want somebody because then there were a ton of articles about how protective he's being, and how women should know this information and people should have an abundance of caution. So do you want the abundance of caution as a conservative, or do you not? Because if you wanted the abundance of caution, you got to take it with the peanuts too.
All right, I guess that's a fair point. I don't want an abundance of caution. I think COVID, which we haven't discussed yet, is the clearest example of the abundance of caution mindset being itself deeply harmful. This is something David Zweig, a journalist we've had on Rising a number of times, he actually has a book out called An Abundance of Caution. We had him on to talk about it. Wow. And he talked about the peanut case, I believe, in the book, or he's talked about it since, and how that applies to COVID, to masking policies in particular, to school closures, to social distancing. We're done in an abundance of caution, but also and we're seeing the lingering, horrible, catastrophic effects on the social behaviors of young people because, well, we want to be very careful, and being careful is not always being smart.
So maybe it's a case-by-case situation.
Still to come, Elon Musk and Bernie Sanders seem to be in agreement when it comes to the impact of AI on jobs. We'll be back with that right after this.
Bernie Sanders is responding to Elon Musk, saying that there won't be any jobs for humans in the future, and surprisingly, Sanders seems to agree.
Earlier this week, Musk responded to an ex-post from Jason Calacanis of the All In podcast. Calacanis was commenting on a New York Times article titled "Amazon Plans to Replace More Than 500,000 Jobs with Robots." The Times goes on to write, internal documents show the company that changed how people shop has a far-reaching plan to automate 75% of its operations.
Now, Calacanis wrote in part, quote, "Told y'all Amazon would replace their employees with robots," and certain folks on the pod laughed and said I was being hysterical. It's insane to think that a human will pack and ship boxes in 10 years. It's game over, folks.
Musk then affirmed this notion, writing, "AI and robots will replace all jobs. Working will be optional, like growing your own vegetables instead of buying them from the store."
Then yesterday evening, Sanders weighed in with it and agreed with Musk's sentiment, writing, quote, "I don't often agree with Elon Musk, but I fear that he may be right when he says AI and robots will replace all jobs." So what happens to workers who have no jobs and no income? AI and robotics must benefit all of humanity, not just billionaires.
Well, this is a bunch of confused premises here, Bernie. I don't think...
What do you mean? Boxers and shippers are real jobs, so then they have to just go get a different job. So you're just saying that their jobs are like, find something else? What if they enjoy doing
I don't
that?
agree with Elon Musk that all jobs will be replaced. There will be no work, and we will live in some utopia, but life will get better.
Do you like it better at the grocery store when you're checking out with this machine instead of the person?
Oh, 1,000%.
Oh, I do not. I was gonna.
Oh,
you said
God.
No, I hate that. I literally. I'm like, dude, like, you didn't. I'm like, what? Yes, I did. I put it in.
I can with the machine. I can do it faster than.
No, it's just an issue every time. And then I just try to buy a bottle of wine. It's always like, I gotta call customer service. Lady takes a half an hour to come over.
That's because the licensing of it.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to just go on the line.
Okay, hold on.
Okay.
We're not going to lose all work. It's just the nature of work is going to change, and that's been for all of human history. Work changed from hunting your own food to farming to factory work to other things. Just the nature of work evolves. Work is not going away, but if it did go away and and robots were able to provide all of our food and all of our goods and services. And Bernie would be like, but what about the labor? What jobs would be like? Who cares then? We would have all the stuff from the robots. That would be a good. Now that's not going to happen, but Bernie will still be like having. This is a very antiquated fear, is what I'm saying. The Amazon job, and by the way, left people have been screaming and mad about the conditions in Amazon work.
As they should.
Okay, well now robots are going to do it, so you must be very happy about this because no one will suffer in this job anymore because it's going to be a robot doing it. Great.
I am not the person that's going to be hysterical over AI. I'm really trying to understand it instead of being hysterical about it. I do think that jobs requiring some kind of empathy or even, well, I don't know, they have robots that are doing a lot of great things in hospitals.
Robots are more empathetic than I am.
No, well, maybe only for you, but other jobs like therapy, I don't want to talk to a robot because as we know, ChatGPT has led people down the wrong path when they mistake it for a therapist. Okay, so we just want to make sure that certain jobs specifically are not getting taken over by robots and AI. I am also fearful though that, a lot of people I saw on CNBC, they had an interview with a bunch of CEOs and JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and even Ford all warned that it will replace literally half of all white-collar workers is what they came up with. Also, Salesforce and a bunch of other companies said that some people, it's not just only the Amazon packing jobs. They obviously think within their companies, even the people in certain
I know, but
executive suites are going to get. So who's going to, then who will,
it's missing
who will work?
It's missing the forest for the trees. There will be new kinds of labor that we can't
fathom right now because it's so big of labor. Like, or there'll be a massive exodus of people in the workforce, and people will be extremely out of pocket trying to figure out their lives.
So then they'll exit those jobs, and then the history of the discovery of the universe, our contemplating of the heavens and the stars and understanding of the celestial bodies, happened because enough people in England and in the Dutch Republic no longer had, the living standards had improved so much that you had some hours left to you during the day where you could think and write and buy a telescope, and that's how we came to have a greater understanding of what's going on with the moon and what's going on with Mars. Like, in our leisure time, we are a productive species, and we make use of our leisure time by people will write novels or create films or build something new or go to Mars or do something. They won't have to languish in a cubicle or even harder labor in a factory. That's a good thing. We've reduced most of civilized times, people had to do backbreaking farm labor from sunup till sundown, then they ate something and they collapsed from exhaustion and went to bed. And that's what life was like for most people, unless you were like a robber or a thief or in a militia. That was your life, and you died at 45, and it was miserable. And we replaced that work. We lost those jobs, Lindsey. Those farm jobs are lost. It's a good thing, because there was other things to do with your time, better things. That's what will happen again.
Okay,
Trust me.
You're speaking from a very, I know you hate this word, privileged, luxurious, and lavish standpoint.
Well, I'm privileged because I didn't have to do that labor.
Right, but there's also some people that actually
because robots do it.
If robots start taking over entry-level jobs right now, not everybody can skip to the point where they write a screenplay that makes it to DreamWorks. So, you're talking from a very, I'm just saying, not everybody has a space to think about these esoteric ideas and make their dreams come true. Some people actually need to work at a fast food place. Some people need to work on a farm. Some people need to do the job that's available to them right in their community and in walking distance to actually make a living and make ends meet. This is so everybody who gets, I can easily speak from a perspective as you, but I'm considering the most vulnerable part of our population that doesn't have all the options at their feet, that actually needs to figure out how to pay bills almost immediately. And when those entry-level jobs go away, they don't have the degree or...
The entry-level job will just be something else, is what I'm saying.
That's what you say. I'm not sure that Elon Musk cares about creating a new entry-level job for these entry-level people.
That does it for us on Rising Live. Look out for more exclusive YouTube content coming your way today. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to The Hill's YouTube channel so that you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we're now available anywhere you listen to podcasts. See you later.